Say hello to yourself. This sponge is you without any negative thoughts in your head. Light, free, and happy. This cup of water represents all the negative thoughts that you think to yourself throughout the day. Each thought or each drop adds a bit more weight and a bit more worry, until suddenly you feel bogged down and sad, all because of what you have chosen to tell yourself. At some point, we all can probably relate to the feeling of wanting to tell someone to stop being mean to us. Whether this be in school or in sports, the thing that we don't realize is that you never tell yourself to stop talking mean to you. If you're telling yourself that you're going to embarrass yourself during your speech, or that you'll never measure up, do you ever actually take the time to realize that you have the power over your negative thoughts? I've always had a difficult time differentiating between what my brain is telling me versus what I've actually heard from other people. Whether this be in school or in sports, I've always overthought, and my negative thoughts have replaced my positive ones and left me feeling nervous and really not excited at all to do anything. At some point, we can all probably relate to this, but part of this is because I'm a huge overthinker, and it's because of a feeling we all share, the feeling that we never quite measure up compared to others. Negative self-talk is not constructive criticism that has led you to where you are today, but instead, something that holds you back from reaching your full potential. Today you will learn how negative self-talk has affected me, the impact of negative self-talk on your brain, and what you can do to turn your life around and combat your negative self-talk. Negative self-talk has affected me in almost every area of my life, but most specifically in sports. Whether it be a bad attitude going into practice or being annoyed at a teammate, it only makes things worse. I'm going to take you back to a time in my life when my negative self-talk was at its highest, which meant my confidence was at its lowest. October 28, 2023. Behind me is a picture of my teammates and I at the state meet my junior year. This is right before the races started, and that smile that is plastered on my face is completely fake. Up to this point, my season had been a mess, and my most recent 5K had been a huge disappointment when I hadn't made all-conference for the first time. This was a meet I was praying would go better, but it was really difficult to stay optimistic. Not only was it 30 degrees outside, but where the course wasn't snow, it was mud. But the conditions weren't the reason I performed so poorly that day. The reason I ran like I did was because I had filled my mind with a bad attitude from waking up in the morning, and my thoughts were negative during and before the race. I'm not as good as the other girls. I haven't worked hard enough. It's too cold outside, and so on. Looking back at this season of my life, I can't help but feel disappointed with myself. What if, for once, I hadn't talked to myself poorly? What if I had decided to be positive instead of negative? Negative self-talk is so powerful because it comes from the same area that our good and positive things come from, our brains. According to Very Well Mind, repeatedly talking to yourself negatively can result in depression, anxiety, OCD, and social anxiety disorder. Perfectionism and relationship issues also can come from negative thinking. If you constantly think negatively about yourself and you're having a conversation with someone who maybe isn't the best communicator or jokes with constructive criticism, suddenly their words are read into, flipped around, and ultimately turned into a way bigger deal than they are. Negative thinkers also have an exhausted brain all the time because they're overthinking and there's no room for positive thoughts. There are many different types of negative self-talk according to Integra's Health. Perfectionism, self-criticism, or telling yourself you're not good enough, personalization, or thinking that every mistake is your fault, or catastrophizing, thinking that one small mistake will lead to a ruined life. Negative self-talk not only negatively impacts your brain, but also your body. The constant buildup of stress can result in digestive problems, an upset sleep schedule, and even cardiovascular problems. So, it's not only ruining your mental health, but also your physical health. After learning what negative self-talk can do to your body, we can now look into what you can do to turn your life around and not stop yourself from going down a negative spiral. We've all heard the phrase, be a sponge. What we don't know about this phrase is that you actually have no choice. You are a sponge, whether you like it or not. The people you choose to surround yourselves with, the music you listen to, and what you read, and everything in between, all impact the way you think. If you're constantly surrounded with negative people or negative voices, your brain will have no choice but to have more negative thoughts than positive ones, and it'll have a harder time sorting through all those negative thoughts. This is why it's so important to surround yourself with sons, or people that constantly bring positivity and happiness in your life. Thankfully, I've been surrounded with sons or positive people since I was born, and I've obviously needed it. Not everybody has the same opportunity though, so that's why it's so important to not be a negative thought causer either. If you are negative around your family or friends, you could be impacting them in ways you may not realize. One way to combat your negative self-talk would be to talk to yourself like you would a friend. Would you tell them the things that you tell yourself, that they're stupid or that they're dumb? Hopefully not. According to Forbes, when you talk to yourself like you would a friend, that activates the region in your brain related to empathy, making that much more powerful. Another thing you could do would be to talk to yourself like you would a younger version of yourself. If you wouldn't tell them the same thing that you're telling yourself now, then you shouldn't be saying it. Forbes also states that the habit of negative self-talk can start as early as childhood. So, in order to break a habit that's this old, you have to repeat the positives day in and day out. It'll take a lot of focus and effort, but the end result is very much worth it. Now you have learned that you can have power over your negative thoughts. Negative self-talk has impacted me in almost every area of my life, in school and in sports, and just life in general. But it is important for us to remember that you can have the impact that negative self-talk can have on your brain, and also that you don't have to constantly live with a negative voice speaking to you. There are many helpful ways to turn your lives more positive. So, at the end of the day, it's hard to remain positive when there's so much negativity in this world surrounding you. So, embrace your inner sponge and absorb the good from the world from the people and things that you love the most.